My name's Dan Coates, and I'm the president of YPulse, and I'm going to sort of lead us through this young people's segment of today's agenda. So one of the things that's kind of interesting is the impact that generations have on society. You know, generations help to move history along. Generations kind of prevent society from suffering for too long under the sort of excesses or quirks of any one particular generation. And they prevent prolonged exposure to one particular style of thinking or approach to living. Equally, generations kind of come into force to sort of counteract the imbalances of the current generation that's in charge, so AKA the man. So generations tend to help us a lot. Right now we have 6 generations in America that are alive, starting with the GI generation, folks born between 1901 and 1924. You know, they kind of came of age during the World War I and Roaring '20s. They were children during that era, and then came of age during the Great Depression and World War II. Silent generation, these were people between 25 and 42. They were children during the Great Depression, children during World War II, which had a distinct sort of impact on them. And then they sort of came of age during the American High and the Cold War, became good company men. If you watch Mad Men, these were the folks of the silent generation. Then the boomers came along, and boy, they changed everything. You know, born between 43 and 60, according to Howe and Strauss, although Elwood Carlson and the Population Reference Bureau would argue that it's 46 to 64. But no matter how you draw the lines, they've had a significant impact. They were children during the American High and the Cold War, and they came of age during the Consciousness Revolution. Currently, you know, boomers are sort of the man, and what's kind of interesting is how they've reacted to going from, you know, fighting against the man to being the man. I love that Sprint commercial, but you are the man, sir. Gen X, this was my generation. Right now, its size is about 84 million people, born from 61 to 81. There were children during the Consciousness Revolution where the adults were kind of preoccupied with discovering themselves and their personal journeys, and came of age during the culture wars and the 90s boom era. Great examples of the X generation: Michael Dell, Michael Jordan. You know, these are people who are individuals first, and performance is what's on their mind. Millennials, which is the generation of youth of today, were born from 82 to 2004, as defined by Howe and Strauss, who coined the term millennials. Their childhood era was these culture wars, the red versus blue states, the 90s boom era, and their coming of age during the Great Recession and the War on Terror. And these pivotal events have a profound impact on a generation's approach to living and view on the world. What follows the millennial generation is something that Howe and Strauss, or Neil Howe actually, Bill Strauss is no longer with us, would call Generation Homeland Security, or Homelanders for short, born starting in 2005, and their development will be marked by the fact that they're growing up during the Great Recession and the War on Terror. What's really interesting about generations is they tend to sort of swing back and forth like pendulums. Millennials are much like GI generation. Homeland Security generation will be much like the silent generation. What's really interesting about generations is the effect that birth rates have had. We've had a big boom, followed by a huge trough, followed by another big boom. And so what that does is make the boomers and the millennials very large, meaty generations, excellent target markets for marketers, and the Xers, who always claimed that they were not a target market, are indeed not a target market. They're kind of smallish, and certainly marketers are retraining their entire marketing infrastructure from focusing on boomers to now focusing on millennials, and our company helps them do that. Here's the size of the various generations, and you can see that millennials are massive. They're the first generation in American history to exceed 100 million members, and so for a lot of folks, that's a huge development and a big reason to pay attention to them.
Dan, your screen's not coming up to the side.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. Well, I've got slides here that I'm talking through that would be compelling if only they were visible. There they are. Great. Thanks, Ken. The other interesting thing about millennials is they're very multicultural. If you look at the various generations, Multicultural millennials make up nearly 40% of this generation, which is a real first. When you talk to millennials, they really are that first generation to be, quote unquote, beyond race. So, just to sum it up, you haven't missed a thing, don't worry about it. The millennial generation were born between 82 and 2004. They seek to correct for the excesses of Generation X and to displace the current in-charge boomer generation. And they have 7 core traits that are really important to focus on, and we'll see a lot of these themes as folks chat through the other speakers. Special, sheltered, confident, team-oriented, conventional, pressured, and achieving. And if you're interested in learning more about these, up at the front table there's these wonderful little millennial cards that describe each of these core traits in detail, and be sure to grab one on the way out. Special, from these sort of precious baby movies, 3 Men and a Baby, of the mid-'80s to the media glare surrounding the high school class of 2000, older generations have given millennials this sense that they are absolutely pivotal to society, collectively vital to the nation and to their parents' sense of purpose. Sheltered, the greatest wave of child protection legislation in history has occurred over the last 20 years. So whether it's Megan's Law or Amber Alerts, the safety of millennials is a huge priority to society, particularly given the post-Columbine kind of shocks to the system that we've had. They're very confident. You'll see from our panel of youth that we'll have up here later that this generation has a lot of optimism. Don't tell them about the economy because they're not hearing anything of it. And we'll hear a little bit more from Eric, and he's going to tell you how he's revolutionizing the world. And you have to admire this sense of confidence and optimism given what we're facing right now, both economically and societally. Very team-oriented. We can blame it all on Barney the dinosaur. These kids work well together. Group assignments, group class projects. They work in teams, and we do a certain amount of studying millennials in the workplace, as the oldest millennials are just approaching the age 30 and are finding their way into corporate America. What's fascinating about millennials is they have this very peer-to-peer style of making decisions. They'll begrudge the Xer or boomer that's in charge and at the top of the organization, but as soon as they get past that level, they seem much more peer-to-peer. None of them are really all that comfortable taking charge, and they like to make decisions together. Conventional, they definitely have been all of the bad behaviors. When you look at statistics from the CDC or the National Institute of Health, things like drug abuse, smoking, alcoholism, all of these things are at all-time lows. The folks that are trying to get people concerned about these bad behaviors are having a tough time getting anybody's attention because these bad behaviors are at all-time lows. So millennials are very much, living good, straightforward lives, and really have a strong feeling that society, rules and standards make things better. Pressured, this is a generation that is really very competitive. There's a lot of them, and so there's scarcity of resources, whether it's places in the top colleges, but these kids work really hard to achieve, and they feel the pressure from their parents, this sort of trophy kid aspect. And then the last one is achieving. Standardized testing, all of the sort of patterns of society have been about performance, and so millennials have become a generation that's totally focused on achievement, not only of themselves, but of everything around them. Smart pens, smart phones, smart cars. They're focused on making sure that the things that they use day to day achieve the sort of goals that are set out for them. And if you're making products that don't do what they're supposed to do, millennials will be brutal on you. Now listen, millennials, they're not high on drugs, but they're certainly high on technology. Millennials, are amongst the quickest to adopt new technologies and fast and furious to use them. And so if you think of a millennial as being, equipped with a smartphone, a laptop, and an iPod, you're not far off. The technology adoption just goes on and on from there. They have very distinctive communications preferences, so they use different tools for different audiences, but if they're talking to their friends, it's mostly texting and social networks. Their family, they got to pick up the phone and call mom. I once saw a kid texting his mom Happy Mother's Day, and I stopped him and I said, call your mother, talk to her, wish her a Happy Mother's Day, don't text that to her. professors, for college students, they're these weird creatures that live in this world of email and work. They've got to use a bunch of these old technologies, email, mobile phones, landline phones, to be able to communicate with people at work. What a drag. And their media consumption is shifting massively to online. The cable networks are in a panic as streaming takes hold on folks. They're spending pretty much a full work week online, and all of the other forms of media are taking a back seat to what is online. And certainly this is, if anything, escalating. If you look at older millennials and how much time they spend online versus younger millennials, it's striking how much it's accelerating. Okay, so to wrap up, the least that you should know about millennials: they're numerous, they have great spending power, largest generation in American history, so it definitely pays to understand them. They're citizens of the global village, multicultural, multiracial, and multilingual. They're jacked up on technology and digital media. They're constantly connected, and their currencies, if you think about it, consists of likes and friends. I was talking to an interviewer about automobiles, and they were asking about millennials and cars, and my quote for them was, status is what's on your homepage, not what's in your driveway. And then this isn't business as usual. This generation is defined by their core values, and our success as marketers, as producers of products, hinges on our ability to break away from our familiar mindset and to embrace theirs. And with that, I'll turn over to Kathleen Gasperini from Label Networks.
Sorry. Technical good. Trying to get out of his into mine real quick. Yeah, I just didn't. This doesn't come. Oh, okay, got it. Hold on a second. Sorry. Okay. Can you hear me okay? All right. Thanks. My name's Kathleen Gasperini, and I'm the Senior Vice President and co-founder of Label Networks. Label Networks is a global youth culture, marketing intelligence, and brand strategy company. And we have been creating global youth culture studies, reports, profile reports, analysis, future forecasting, and so on for a variety of different clients since 2000, ranging from anywhere from Apple Computer to Adidas Originals to Burton Snowboards and Dr. Pepper, among others. And what we put together in terms of our trend forecasting and reports includes quantitative data from surveys that we conduct usually in face-to-face interviews with 13 to 25-year-olds, as well as our own analysis and looking at things from a historic perspective, and from that being able to do some future forecasting. What I wanted to talk about, just to start is to start more at a higher level in terms of why youth culture today and why more brands are looking at the youth culture marketplace. And by youth culture, I mean 13 to 25-year-olds, and what it is about this marketplace that has intrigued so many different brands. We work with a lot of clients, for example, that may not target this specific demographic, but they are interested in the youth marketplace for a lot of different reasons. One of them being that they're the world's wealthiest and most influential generation, and they are the ones that are driving the speed of change. It's not necessarily being dictated from the top down any longer. They have a very strong DIY spirit, or do-it-yourself, extremely entrepreneurial, and they've grown up with access to technology. Basically, they're generationally at ease with smartphones, video games, screens, all sorts of different things. So they think a lot differently than any other generation previous. They also have terrific spending power. In the United States, 13 to 25-year-olds have a spending power of $172 billion. 68 billion in Western Europe, 5 Western European countries, 72 billion in Japan, and the estimated amount is in China is still to be determined, but it's a percentage of 3.3 trillion. And one reason why we also do a lot of work in China is because of demand. But the youth culture marketplace in China of 13 to 25-year-olds is 300 million people, which is basically the same size as all of the United States of America put together. The trends in terms of the youth culture marketplace are coming from the bottom up, meaning it's coming from the consumer, and then this is what's influencing a lot of different designers, a lot of different entertainment industries. It's changed up a lot of things in terms of music, sports, fashion, you name it. It's also crossing a lot of different boundaries, and because of technology, there's a lot of new niche areas that are infiltrating and becoming more mainstream. Also, in terms of their thought process of what's important to them, you have to think too, I've been listening the last couple of days to a lot of the presentations, which have been excellent, but one big question is what is entertainment? You know, what does it mean to the youth marketplace today? And they're creating their own entertainment. So sometimes the idea of perceived traditional entertainment is very, very different to this marketplace. And I'll talk about a couple of things in just a minute. So looking at some of our data, this is surveying from our North American Youth Culture Study from fall, for example. We asked thousands of young people in a representative sampling of 13 to 25-year-olds to answer some of these questions, and I'm pulling some of the results. Which best describes your role in household purchasing decisions? And when it comes to things like personal electronics, they have a very great influence in terms of what the family is going to end up buying. 59.9% in terms of their influence on personal electronics. The next highest in terms of their influence on electronics is video gamings, and then computers and computer accessories at 38.5%. In terms of social networks, they're very important to the youth demographic, and it's not necessarily that they have a Facebook profile only. They may have multiple social network profiles to fit whatever their need is. And one of the key features that they like in terms of cell phones and internet is to things that can help them with being their own blogger, citizen journalist, and creating their own entertainment. Another interesting statistic is, in the last 6 months, we asked how frequently are you participating in the following activities online? And watching movies online more frequently has increased, is the number one, 34.1%. So this is sort of tracking the migration of watching these different types of entertainment, electronic media, moving it online. TV shows more frequently at 36.1%. The other thing that's very high is watching videos online now instead of TV, and they're getting the majority of their information online, not necessarily from TV. This is a chart that shows more specifically by gender, and you can see that it's male to female. It's slightly higher among females that are watching TV shows more online. The top things that have replaced watching on TV and now is online is music videos, movies, and TV shows, and in that particular order. An important result that we had here that I thought would be applicable for this conference is, in the future, where would you prefer to watch your entertainment? And while television is high across the board, across all age groups, the younger the demographic, the higher things like laptop, computer, iPhone, smartphone are increase. So there's a generation gap happening within the generation itself that's migrating away from things like TV as their primary form of entertainment and wanting to watch entertainment, and moving to more portable, private devices like a laptop computer. In terms of cell phones, in the last 6 months, how frequently are you participating in the following activities using your mobile phone? Listening to music's number one, followed by updating or viewing social networks, browsing the web, watching the music videos, uploading photos. So looking at this scale, you can see how important having a mobile strategy or mobile culture is to the youth market, particularly by age groups, because younger demographics are using them more frequently as well. And finally, Just a couple of things about fashion. We do a lot in the music and fashion industries, and the importance of how fashion is entertainment also to this marketplace. The idea of shopping, the idea of looking at things online, and some of these stores that have done some amazing things towards engaging the youth marketplace using electronic media. For example, H&M and working with Second Life in creating an entire collection and campaign where people could create their own designs, virtual designs, which were eventually voted on and made into real collections throughout the seasons. Also, fashion's embraced a lot the use of short videos, anything from 15 seconds to 2 minutes, to promote their upcoming collections and then putting it on YouTube. And this is one way that a lot of young people are actually looking at what the latest trends are in fashion, is from YouTube videos or videos in general. And also, fashion's made a big step in terms of being where the youth market is, online and embracing cell phone culture. And by EIY, I mean earn it yourself. There's also a sense of the youth marketplace thinking they've got to do it for themselves because nobody else is going to do it for them. So they're coming up with ways that not only is their own entertainment, but also ways to make a living, to earn money from their own skills and from their own interests. Just a couple other things about technology is in terms of retail and how this has changed up too. Is things like wearable technologies, designer headphones are very popular, and that's also moves into that crossover between electronic media and fashion and accessories. And the last picture here is the owner of Brooklyn Circus just won an amazing award with Dell. It did a huge competition. It's called a Creative Project. And basically, you can submit your different ideas for your company, your business, and they will give you seed money to start a different collection. So to wrap it up, in terms of entertainment, it's a bigger story than some of the things that maybe people think in terms of just TV, especially TV. It's more personal. It's about personal expression and using these personal devices. It's connecting outside of vertical industries. The youth market's very good at doing that. They don't have cultural boundaries, so they can cross a lot of different platforms quite easily. It's the pride of being local, but with a global reach. And you can see that, for example, with social networks, Facebook, and so on. The importance of different subcultures, particularly music. Watching what's going on in the music industry and what preferences are in music is one of the best ways to tap into the youth culture marketplace. Knowing their key lifestyles and that sort of thing. Also, very DIY spirit, like I had mentioned, in terms of understanding that do-it-yourself example of creating one's own entertainment. And discovery, it's the biggest motivating factor to the youth market. So if you can think young and think with the eyes of new, listen to the panel that we have next coming up, I think that it will really help because they don't have the cultural blinders on that we all do when we get older. And that's something that we can all take to heart and learn from youth culture. Thank you.
That's great. We'll just transition to John Gillis.
Thanks.
One second. Do you guys have a feed on the computer? No. All right, one second. Now? I hope. Hey, it's an Apple, you guys. It's supposed to just plug in and work, right?
There we go.
It's in? Maybe this display thing's a little, yeah.
Mirror
I don't need it.
displays,
I don't
mirror
need to
displays.
duplicate it.
Mirror display.
I don't need it. There we go. Yeah. Hey, how you guys doing? Hopefully well. My name's John, and I've done somewhat of a recent graduate. I've had dual bachelors in new media communications, so trying to think about how social networks work and how people interact is probably one of the main things I do. I've worked with Apple, University of Tennessee, Titan Oil, and currently working with Integrated Educational Strategies, trying to figure out how exactly to intersect computers and schooling within blended and hybrid models. So I want to talk to you guys today about just a couple things. First, of how people are utilizing devices, be it iPads, Motorola Zooms, and then secondly, one of the newer trends that's coming up with how kids are surfing the web online, which I think is pretty interesting, hopefully something you guys haven't heard too much about, but have noticed. So one of the first things I want to talk to you guys about is this little guy right here. About 5 or 6 years ago, these became pretty popular. Everyone knows them as Netbooks. They were selling like hotcakes. They were just going in and out of the stores. They had a low price point. They were very portable, and things were looking very well. Fortunately, a couple of years later, a couple of these guys came around, and that's what started to take over the market. So everything from iPad to Zooms to Galaxy Tabs, the Galaxy Nexus, the iPhone, the Motorola Droid Razr, even the Kindle. These devices have not quite destroyed the netbook market, but have damaged it very harshly. In fact, last quarter alone, Apple sold more iPads than Dell sold of all computers, including desktops, laptops, and everything. So this is clearly, as most of you guys know, and I see several people even out there using tablets right now, this is probably the next evolution of computing. So let's talk about probably one of the most important ones on here, which is the iPad, just simply because we don't have time to focus on them all. Obviously, most of you guys have used something with iOS, be it an iPhone, an iPod Touch, or an iPad. Specifically, the iPad has some really great features that I see coming into schools and with teenagers too. Obviously with the bigger screen, it's very easy to interact with. Not only that, but they actually sell at pretty cheap price points for schools, which means that schools can actually realistically budget and integrate them into their ecosystem. So one of the things that's probably really interesting to know is why exactly do people intend to buy these? So I think that's important to realize how you can utilize it from there. So there was 4 main categories done by study by Mashable Education, and the biggest section by far was actually that people want to use iPads for entertainment. That was their 100% intention. Even if they considered it a kind of expensive toy, they wanted it to entertain them, to bring them into a different world. They could hold it on their lap, on the couch, and want to experience what it had for them. And that's what Apple is really trying to drive forward with their whole magical, quote-unquote, marketing term, because they wanted people just to buy it, not so much worry about the technology, but worry about getting immersed inside Apple's ecosystem with the iOS software. Now, one other thing that's kind of interesting to talk about is, so they bought it for entertainment, but what are people actually using them for? That same survey that had about 7,000 teenagers found out that the 2 main things that people are using the iPad for is an e-reader and a gaming device. Now, e-reading doesn't specifically mean textbooks. That includes textbooks, that includes graphic novels is becoming a big part, the iBookstore, the Kindle is a huge part of it, and then also, of course, with gaming. The iPad is set to outsell Nintendo's portable products in the next couple of years. So these are 2 really, really big markets that are very important to get into. So with that said, it seems pretty clear that people really want to use iPads for information, for interactivity, and for entertainment. But how exactly can you effectively use that in schooling, and can you? Well, the American Library Association, pretty big deal, but a couple years ago they actually came out and said when it comes to these tablets and with social networking too, that teachers, administrators, and district leaders should educate minors to participate responsibly, ethically, and safely. So it isn't a matter of if we should, it's how we should. And I think one of the most important ways to start integrating social networks into school is to keep the options open. And what I mean by that is one of the newer trends that we're seeing with kids using social networking is not loss of retention, but wanting options. It's not the fact that they don't want to sit on a website and read what's going on. It's that if they want to read a paragraph or 2 and hop over to something else, and they should be able to do that. So be it when a page is loading or something else is going on, they want to be able to switch between different points. And I'll show you what that's like. When this guy comes up, you're going on a web page, and it just sits there and loading. Me as a user, I want to say, okay, things are going here. Let me see, okay, I've got Facebook on this other device. I can open up another tab. Let me start seeing what's going on. And what that does, if you as the parent or someone else doesn't give the student or the customer any options to go, then they leave what you're trying to show them. So what's really important is when you're trying to show people your message and get them in your ecosystem is to remember these. Those are tabs, okay? These are the different web pages that people have open. And we're finding that kids between the ages of 13 and 17 are open more and more all the time. A study by a man named Patrick Dubois brought up some really great points about that. He's calling these people tabbers. And a recent study of 8,000 people showed that light tab users, which is mainly people who are on the internet for less than an hour a day, have give or take 5 tabs open at a time. So that's 5 live web pages that they're flipping between. So that doesn't necessarily mean that if they're on the web page you told them to go on, that they're going to stay on it. A power user, which is comprised about 20 to 25% of them, have up to 22 tabs open at any given time. So that's over about 3 different windows. And that's really impressive to think that teenagers and everyone else can go between 23 different sources of information and actually bring it in and start to learn. And then the common user has between 8 and 9 tabs open. So kind of what that looks like is the teenager is going to have A, B, and C, different options to do stuff in. And they're going to start with B, and they're reading all the different categories. But eventually, when that page starts to load, they're going to go over to the next one, then they're going to go back to another one, and eventually back to your first source in the first place. So if you're trying to create content for a student or a customer to stay interactive, what you really need to do is you need to make your ecosystem look like this. So when they start off with reading one source of content, they need to be able to switch between all of your different pages. So in the school, what that's going to look like is don't give a child 1 article to read. Give them 5 or 6 articles to read and let them go back in between them, be it Wikipedia, encyclopedia. There's so many different sources for any given topic, and it's so important for you guys to take all that information that's out there on the internet and not just give someone one point of view, but give them several point of views. That way they don't leave what you're trying to teach them, but they just hop back between several different points of views. One other thing that's important to remember is the perception of social media. I tend to think that in schooling specifically, people think social networking can be a magic bullet, the one-stop fix-all, and that's not really the case, at least if you do it the standard way that everyone's doing it now. The perception of social networking is actually really negative between people between the of 13 and 17. So I would say don't put all of your eggs in one basket. If you're trying to get a group of kids to pay attention to what you have to do, don't expect it to work just because you're on social networking. Just because you're on Facebook, Twitter, Edmodo, and Tumblr, and the thousands of other blogging sites, just because you're doing it and because kids use it doesn't mean it will work. You have to find ways to gear it towards your audience, find ways to customize it, and that doesn't mean don't use the services that are out there, but remember who you're talking to. Don't talk to yourself, talk to your audience. 92% of teenage girls between the ages of 13 and 17 said that they would give up social networks to keep their close friends every day of the week. This is not something that people are relying on to save their lives. This is a preferred method of communication and nothing else. People still want interaction. People still want to have relationships, and social network is not going to take that over. It's merely a part of it. So don't expect it to be a magic bullet, but it is a really effective way to relay messages within schooling. So in closing, I think it's really important just to remember to let your students have options and options and options. Give them many articles to read. Don't give them one and expect them to read a whole thing. Don't send them a 20, 25 paragraph article and say, just have fun reading it. Find a way to let them have options. It can work in schools. It's been proven, and Lisa's going to address that here in just a second about how it works. And there's huge opportunities, be it Facebook educational games, educational apps, or just integrating it in a very special and unique way, social networking into your audience. For any of the techie guys out there, focus all on HTML5. Flash is going downhill pretty fast. Just recently, they discontinued all efforts for their mobile devices, and it's looking like that trend is continuing. Flash isn't a bad technology, but HTML5 is the future. KISS stands for Keep It Simple, Stupid. And that's really important. When you're trying to relay messages to people through Facebook or any other site, keep it really precise, keep it short to the point, and let your student or the audience dig more if they choose to. And then finally, remember that design is important, has to look nice. the content is king. It's got to be there. But the user interface is the alpha and omega. That's the most important part, is how your student or customer interacts with the social networking or the interactive device that you're putting in front of them. So thank you for listening. And next up, I think, Lisa. All right.